Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jay Rothman, and welcome to Real People, Real Stories, Raw. I'm coming in from the United States. It is about high noon on a West Coast time, East Coast. It's 3 p.m., mid afternoon, and I am excited to have in the studio with me a panel of co authors of a book called Sacred Hearts Rising Sparks of Light. Last evening, I had five co authors join me for a very similar show. And if you did catch us live or on replay, what I have here today is five more of my co authors that have decided to jump in on this anthology series. This is book number 3, Sparks of Light. In the studio today, I'm honored and humbled to have with me Brenda Hammon. And Brenda Hammon, I'd like to invite you to start us off, to deep dive into what really was your why for starting this book series, and how, in fact, it has changed your life and what you have learned about yourself from from being a part of this project for a couple of years now.
Well, thank you, Jay, for having all of us here. This is an exciting time. We're getting ready to do the book launch and the pre-order. So Sacred Hearts actually started long before I actually knew what Sacred Hearts was going to be. And it started when I wrote my very first book. And all I wanted to do was touch one other person. I wanted one other person to know that they weren't alone in the world, whether, whatever had happened. And mine was sexual abuse. So, and if I could touch one person with my story and change their life, then that was what I wanted to do. So I forged forward and I wrote my story, and with that sole hope. So 3 books later, I wanted to be able to touch more people. And so I wanted to write the story about my granddaughter Jodi that had passed away when she was 7 days old. And 7 days, you can't exactly write a novel. Like what, really, you can't. There wasn't much to say, but I could write a chapter about her and the impact that she had on my life. So I did that, and then I put it out there and said, does anybody else want to share something in their past that they want to work on, they want to get over? And that's when Liz came on board, and I think we had like 27 authors that came out into the first book. And we had stories from cutting, we had suicide, we had sexual abuse, we had incest, we had domestic violence, we had drug addiction. It was incredible, the stories that came out. And I thought, okay, there's one book. And then I had people come up and say, well, I want to share my story. And I thought, oh, how many more stories can there really be? And because I thought we had covered a lot of the topics that nobody talks about. And there was more things that were happening and more atrocities that men and women were suffering at the hands of other people that needed to be talked about, and if we're forever silent in our own story, how can we help somebody else, and how can we help ourselves mainly? So that's really how Sacred Hearts was started, was wanting to be able to reach out and help other people share their stories so that they could overcome. And all of the stories have to be inspirational. I mean, you have to be able to look at your story and find the good. And for me, that was looking at sexual abuse that had happened to me and going, well, okay, what was so great about that? Well, nothing. But what was great is I became a very strong person from it all. And if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here sitting today with a panel of beautiful women and a nice looking guy. So, so sharing your stories and turning it into something positive is a beautiful thing. And it just takes a different way to look at things, a different way to look at life. And somebody said, well, would you change your past if you could? And I said, there's no way that I would change my past, because my past has led me here. And if my past didn't happen, Sacred Hearts wouldn't have happened. And, and we have to just look at our stories in a different light and not let them burden us and not let them keep clinging on to us in our present. So you have to let go of the past so that you can move forward into the present. And And that's what I hope that Sacred Hearts has done for lots of people.
I love what you just shared, Brenda. And for those of you that there may be a lag if you're looking at me and I'm somewhat frozen. This is just part of the bandwidth being compromised right now. It appears as though everyone else is moving just fine. I believe all of you ladies are, in fact, your home is somewhere in Canada. I'm coming in from Arizona, and right now we are looking at some type of bandwidth lag on my end, but the show will go on. And I love what you said, Brenda. From your perspective, this is book 3. My sense from the co-authors that joined me in the studio last night, Louise shared, without getting into the details of what his chapter was about, but his story is about a single dad raising children. And my understanding was that it's about some of the challenges and struggles that he has had as a single dad raising.
Okay, we have lost Jay somewhere along the line, and I will pick up from what Jay has said. Yes, Lewis's story is about being a single dad in today's world, and there are no resources out there. So I opened up Sacred Hearts to men, and that happened last year also. We had a young man in who has Asperger's, and so he told his story from his point of view of what it was like to have Asperger's in the world. And I thought Lewis's story was one of those stories that in this day and age where men are being forced to raise their children due to death of a spouse, divorce of a spouse, or domestic violence, there is no help out there. There are no social services. There's nothing for men to be able to go to gain some help. And that's why Lewis wanted to share his story, was so that he could bring that awareness forward.
What would you say, Brenda, is some of the highlights for you as far as what you have learned about yourself from doing these 3 books now? What would you say is your biggest takeaway about your own inner strength?
That I have value, that I have something to offer to the world. And that for me, the chapter that I wrote in this book is called The Day I Mattered. And that was a pivotal point for me, because for most of my life, I didn't matter. I had no value. I was worthless. That had been told to me for decades, that, you're worthless, you have no value, and nobody cares about you. You could drop dead and nobody would really miss you. And that, like I say, started from 5 years on and up. So that is probably what I have learned the most, is that I do have value and I do have something to offer to the world. And I can make a difference in somebody else's life if I choose to make a difference in my own. And that was a pivotal point. It truly was.
Thank you for sharing that, Brenda. What I'd like to do is invite Elizabeth Gagnon to open up and share with the community. And by the way, I would like to thank those that are joining us live or on replay. Today is a special day. It's a day right before we have our official launch of Sacred Hearts Rising. You can pre-order the book on Amazon. Today, there is a link going across the ticker or banner on the bottom of our screen, so you can pre-order today. But as of tomorrow is the official release launch date of the book number 3, Sparks of Light, Sacred Hearts Rising. And so, Elizabeth, I'd like to invite you to take some time here. I know that this is not your first book that you have been involved in this project. You've been in I believe at least one other, if not, perhaps this is your 3rd installment in the anthology. I'm excited to hear from you as to what your why was, why you decided to get in on the first project, and why you have stayed with it and continue to share different parts of your journey, part of your life with us.
Well, for me, my journey started when I started following Brenda back in 2016 on Facebook. I'm in Ontario, so And growing up, I always wanted to be heard. And Brenda wrote a book called Hear Me. And I didn't even know what that book was about. That book was calling out to me, and I just wanted to be heard. So I reached out to Brenda, and she was doing, I believe, the launch for Hear Me and that. So we talked back and forth for a couple of months, and then she had put it out there that she was looking for authors, I believe for grandparents. And then it switched around, and then she opened it up to people who had stories of overcoming stuff. So for me and Brenda, it's been a real journey with Brenda. Like, it's been an adventure. That woman has changed my life in more ways than one. And without her, I wouldn't be here today. So yes, I have shared in 3 books. And in each book, it's been an adventure. It's been a roller coaster, but a good roller coaster. It's had its up, it's had its downs. There were triggers again. Of course, reliving everything, you have that struggle again of being in it. But by sharing in Sacred Hearts, you don't live in it anymore. You live on it. You stand on it. You're proud of your story. Brenda makes it so that we're proud of who we are and how far we have come. She sees something in all of the authors, and she's there for the ride. And so.
Elizabeth, what would you say is the number one thing that you have learned about yourself you didn't know before you became a co-author?
Oh my goodness, I have a voice. I learned that I have a voice. I'm not a mouse anymore. I'm a lion. Like, get out of my way. Like, I've grown. Like, I look at myself from book 1 to book 3, and I see the transformation. Like, it's huge transformation. Always had my back, and always will have my back, because we are connected for life. Like, all of us authors are all connected for life now. Like, no matter where we go, we're all together. Like, we're all stitched together now. So
I wonder, Elizabeth, if you're willing to share with us right here, right now, how has your relationships with friends and or family changed since you decided to share parts of your life in Sacred Hearts Rising?
It hasn't really changed much with my family, because my family hasn't really been supportive. The fake support is there, but the real support is not. And I don't think it ever will be. And that's okay. I've accepted that, and it hurts, but with pain comes growth. So I'm good with that. My friends are Sacred Hearts, are my brothers and sisters. That's my family, and everyone that's coming into my life through sharing my stories. So
if I may paraphrase what I believe I just heard you say, is a large part of making a conscious choice to share your story in the book is really it's about acceptance. It's understanding that not everybody in your circle of life is going to support or respect your perspective on what your reality in your life has been. And it's about acceptance, knowing that when you choose to show up for yourself, you're doing it for you, regardless of how others may perceive or interpret your reality, which is, in fact, it's yours. It's not theirs. And so I believe that that's what I heard, is it really comes down to acceptance that not everybody's going to agree, and not everybody has to agree. What's most important is that you speak your truth, your perspective on your reality and what your experiences have been as a human being growing up in your life. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, with me, it's always, when people read my story, I don't want to give my story away, but when people read my story, after they read it, they come up to me and they say, Elizabeth, how are you the way you are today with everything that has happened to you? How do you have such a big heart with everything that you have gone through? And my thing is, I choose not to give anybody what I was given. I choose to be different, and I choose to stand on who I am. And not everybody likes who I am, and that's okay, because I don't want everybody liking me.
Elizabeth, who is the most important person that needs to like you in your life?
Myself.
Thank you. Boom. We got it. You got it, girl. Elizabeth and I, we go back now, I think well over a year. We've done a number of, we've had so many conversations, and we continue to support each other's work that we're both doing, and I just love how you show up consistently every day. You put yourself out there. You share your life in a very public way through social media, your ups and downs, your highs and lows. But you know what? Most days I see a woman that shows up that is at peace, even though at times it is challenging, even though at times we may feel like we have more questions than answers. But ultimately, I see how you show up consistently on a daily basis, putting your truth out there and sharing your story. And what a beautiful way to show up for yourself, first and foremost. And secondly, I know that how you lead by example, you help inspire others that it's possible. Brenda, I would like to ask you, with Elizabeth having been a contributor now in a number of these books, what is your perspective? How do you embrace Elizabeth and the work that she does today?
When I first met Elizabeth, she was that mouse, and she was scared, and she was shy, and she was surrounded by guilt and fear. And having her share her first story, it was a tough journey. I mean, there's no doubt about it. When you are talking about sexual abuse and you are talking about incest, there are things that there are certain people that don't want you to talk about that. And getting Elizabeth to release the secret that somebody else had forced her to keep was probably the pivotal point for her. And once she realized that she didn't have to carry somebody else's dirty little secret, she just flew. And I mean, she was a fledgling, and she was up and flying and bouncing every once in a while, but she sure gained her wings, and she has grown. Every story that she has written, from the first book to the third book, has been a different story, but in her struggles to gain her dependence, to gain her value, and to gain her worth in the world. And I'm so proud for the journey that she has gone on, and how she has transformed herself into this beautiful woman who does have a voice and who isn't afraid to reach out now and talk to other people and to say, this is who I am, take it or leave it. And that's a beautiful thing.
I love that. I love hearing what you just shared, Elizabeth. Brenda, Elizabeth, let me ask you, how is it for you to receive and hear Brenda's experience of watching you blossom like a beautiful flower in the springtime?
Well, for me and Brenda, we have a special relationship that many probably don't understand and don't get, but that's okay, because me and Brenda, we get it. And Brenda is almost like my mama bird. Like, she knew where I needed to fly, and she knew where I needed to be pushed. And even to this day, there's days where I'm like, Brenda, I don't know if I can do this, or why am I doing this, or why is things happening this way? Like, why am I losing these people to gain this path? Like, why? Like, you know? And Brenda's like, Liz, just do your thing. Just do you. Just be you. And me and Brenda have grown, and we're connected for life. Like, she's the lady who said, I believe in you. And today, the things that are happening in my life, I truly amaze me. Like, I would have never done half of what I'm doing. I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't have the titles that I have. And the titles mean nothing if you don't believe in yourself. And Brenda has given me that. She has made me see, believe in you, Liz. Whether they believe in you or not, or if I don't believe in you for that thing, don't worry about it, but just do it. Like, if you like it, do it. So me and Brenda have a relationship that will never change. Like I said, I wrote in another book, and I put that she is my saving grace. She is my angel, and that's how I look at Brenda. Me and Brenda are connected for life, and I'm truly blessed to have met Brenda. And I believe that I was meant to meet all of you people, like all of the authors, because like when Jen talks, you'll see how she got in the book. And, it's just amazing how the ripple effect or the universe works. People are connected for a reason, So me and Brenda, we have a relationship that is our relationship. And I love that woman to death. Like, she means a lot to me.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Elizabeth. Brenda, I would presume there's probably close to maybe 60 co-authors now in the Sacred Hearts family. Is that pretty accurate? 50 to 60?
Yeah, it's we're over 60. That's for sure.
And so part of becoming a co-author and writing in one of the books is it's more than just becoming a co-author. There's just a family that's developed. Can you touch on that a little bit? What that has meant for you, and how do you keep this going? Like how do you keep this momentum going with a group of co-authors?
It's like a family, and right now we are a big extended family, and people share their stories for a multitude of reasons. Oh, I think I've got some noise happening here. Sorry. My bookkeeper is printing, so sorry. So people share because they want to help somebody. They share because they want to make a difference somewhere along the line. They share because they just want to get it out and not have to deal with it anymore. Some of them are going to jump on board and ride the Sacred Hearts train right all the way through. Some of them just get on and write their story and then hop off. So it's an interesting dynamic in the community of what Sacred Hearts is. But one of the fundamental things that is for everybody is how supportive they are. There's no judgment. None of that happens. And if you're having a bad day, you can actually post into the authors group and say, I am having a bad day. And somebody is there to pick you up and say, I understand, and we're here for you. So it is interesting, and it's a blessing in disguise, and for everybody to be connected the way they are. So keeping up the momentum is a bit tougher as we're going along, because now there's the pandemic that's going on, and there's the economy in Alberta especially that's going on. So it's a little bit more difficult to keep that wave going, but we'll just keep on going forward.
I'd like to invite you, Brenda, to maybe take a moment here to share with the community, those in the audience and those as co-authors, what was your meaning behind the cover that you selected that was designed for Sacred Hearts Rising? What does that cover mean to you, and what should it mean to all of us as co-authors? And maybe you could even hold it up if you got a copy of the book there.
No, I don't have a copy of the book. I don't have a copy. When I get a copy, everybody gets a copy. So I don't have a copy of the cover, but the cover is designed by a lady in South Africa, and she had contacted me about designing the covers, and I had picked certain things that I needed in each cover. And the first book is The One Angel. So this is the cover of the first book. Oh, there we go. With the one angel, and she had to have beads, and she has to have a heart, and she had to have wings. And so when we did book number 2, we had the 2. So when we did book number 3, we had more men in book number 3 than we had in book number 2, because we only had one in book number 2. And I wanted to show that it's not just women who have problems. It's also men. So when I asked her to create the cover, I said, I need you to make sure that there is a man in the cover of the designing of your book. And I just turned it over to her and I let her do the designing. And what the cover shows is that we're all in this together. We're no different. Men and women are no different. We all have the exact same struggles. We all have the exact same things that happen to us. Men are sexually abused as well as women. You know, there's incest for men as well as women. There's domestic violence for men as well as women. You know, women are not the sole recipients of life's crap. Unfortunately, it happens to men and it happens to children. And I wanted that to be encompassed in the book. I wanted people to know that this isn't just a women's group. This isn't just a women's society. This isn't just a women's community. This is a humanitarian. We're all human beings and we all matter, no matter what our gender is.
Now, what I'd like to just kind of share my perspective. There's a number of co-authors in this book, number 3, that didn't necessarily, their stories are not about physical, sexual, or even emotional abuse as much as just life experiences. For example, Taqwa Ahmad, who came in last night, a beautiful 13-year-old from Pakistan. Her story is unique to herself. It's her story, but it really it's a much bigger story for her than an experience. It was her parents having to fight to save her life because she was born with spina bifida. And in Pakistan, the rules are a little bit differently, a little different than they are in other countries. And so the book is not just with authors coming forward sharing the story of there's different types of trauma and experiences that we have had, as Taqwa has shared last night, as Louise has shared as well last evening. So there's a potpourri, there's many different stories, there's different angles, but what's important is that each one of the co-authors has had the ability to overcome, and instead of living in the pain, they have chosen to feel the pain and learn how to kind of heal from it and step out of their own inner story and become something stronger and greater than they ever thought they were capable of. For example, Taqwa is a social activist today in Pakistan. And for a 13-year-old, that's pretty commendable.
Yeah, Taqwa's story is a very unique story. I think everybody's stories are very unique, and don't think that your stories aren't. Hers was before she was even born, you know, and how society deemed handicapped children, and that handicapped children were disposable and should be disposed of. And her parents hung on to the belief that this is their daughter, this is the child, she was chosen for them, and they were going to move forward no matter what. And no matter what society thought about them, no matter what anybody said about them, this was what they were going to do. And, you know, doing that for Taqwa and saving Taqwa, you know, she is now a peace ambassador. So, you know, you can never think that your story, no matter what it is, isn't important to the world, because everybody's story is important to the world. And Taqwa's is a good example. And it's like Alexis, who is being transgender. That's an important story to the world, because she's telling the story of how it is, what's going on, and almost like behind the scenes stuff of when you make those decisions. So we all have stories, and Taqwa's wouldn't be talked about. You know, she's a peace ambassador, but in sharing her story, she told the untold parts of it for the world to hear. And that's a beautiful thing. And your story yourself, Jay, is the same way. You know, your story is breaking down the barriers and saying, okay, this is what I was like, and I'm not proud of what I was about back then, and I'm not proud of the things that I had done in my life, but I decided that I can make a difference by making a change, and look where you're at today. So, you know, everybody has a unique story, and, you know, Jennifer and Nadine and Jodi, they all have very unique stories that are unique to them. And that's the beauty about Sacred Hearts, is we're just not about sexual abuse and domestic violence. We're about everything. You know, if you can't talk about what has happened to you, or you are ashamed about what has happened to you, and you want to make a difference, then this is where you need to go. This is the platform that you can use, where you are not judged in any way, shape, or form about the decisions that you've made, including those that have had to have abortions. You know, there is no judgment. We get to walk in your shoes, and we get to understand where you're coming from and what you have gone through. We get to walk through your shoes and guide you and be with you and be proud of you and be inspired by you.
Beautiful. I love that, Brenda. Thank you so much for expanding upon that. What I'd like to do is shift up to Jennifer and invite you to, well, first of all, welcome to the studio. Welcome to Sacred Hearts Rising, Sparks of Light family. Book number 3, which tomorrow, April 14th, is the date where we will be officially, our book will be released on Amazon booksellers and is for sale. Powerful stories within this book. I suggest that if you have some downtime right now, which millions of us do across the globe, would be a great time to order your Kindle version or your soft cover copy. Jennifer, welcome to the studio, and love for you to jump in right now and share with us your why. Why did you get involved in this project, and how has it impacted your life?
First off, I want to say thank you for having me on today. And how I got involved was I had a story that I wanted to share, and I wanted to share it for quite some time, because when I was going through what I had went through, I felt alone, and I didn't know where to reach out, who to reach out to, even though I was surrounded by so many people. And so I wanted to share it in just being a voice to other people, to know that they're not alone in whatever that it is that they're going through. So, but I didn't know how I was going to do that. So I was going about my daily business. My husband and I have a digital business, which introduced me to Elizabeth. And in that meeting, she shared with me Sacred Hearts Rising. And I had heard about Sacred Hearts Rising prior, because my mom had actually been got a copy of the book a year prior to that, and my mom was sharing the story with me of the book and all of the stories that were in it, and how it was helping her for that particular time that she was going through. But I heard about the book, but I wasn't ready to hear about it. I was meant to meet Elizabeth, and I was meant to be on this journey with Elizabeth. And then that's how it transpired. So I looked into the book, and then I reached out to Brenda, and I said to Brenda, okay, I need to write my story, and I need to share it with everyone. So that's how it got started, and here I am now.
Beautiful. Now, Jennifer, I'd like to invite you to expand a little bit on how was the process of putting together your chapter. How was that for you? Have you written before? And if not, what have you learned about yourself through the process?
I've done journaling, but that's as far as it went. I never did write anything before. And the process of writing it, it took me on, it was almost like reliving the experience again. So that in itself was healing, but it was scary. I went through many emotions writing it out, and it still to this day, I can say that there's been steps where I think that, okay, I'm past that, and then a little thing will come up, but I'm like, no, this has made me stronger. It's given me a voice that I can share with other people and encourage them to speak their truth too. So I got out of my head and into my heart. I put those voices away from my head, and and I feel and with my whole entire heart now.
I love that, Jennifer. I love how you just shared. I got out of my head and went into my heart. And I'm excited to read your chapter because I know this is that when we are able to turn off our thoughts and really share from our heart space, that's where the love is. So I'm excited to read your chapter because it's going to come from your genuine, authentic self, not from what some refer to as that ego space, with concern about how my story may be interpreted or perceived or received by others. Instead, you spoke from your heart where your truth lies, and it's going to show. I'm sure it's going to show just absolutely beautiful in the book.
Well, it's transformed me into being who I am, because I was lost for a long time. I was basically just kind of going day by day and living each day. And then when I really discovered who I was as a person, that's when I blossomed. And now I feel free, and I just want to share everything with everybody. I think it's beautiful. It's a beautiful transformation.
Well, congratulations on becoming an author. Tomorrow is your day, and hope you. Well, I know it's just been an absolutely beautiful experience for you and your loved ones that have supported you through this project, and so congratulations.
Thank you. I have an amazing
Nadine,
support system behind me.
What's that?
I said thank you. I have an amazing support system behind me.
Beautiful, beautiful. Nadine, I'd like to invite you to share with us here today. What was your why? Why did you decide to jump into this amazing opportunity of authors and become a part of the Sacred Heart Rising family?
Well, I actually was introduced to Brenda from a good friend of both of ours, who we respect, named Jodi. And she thought we should work together. So I'm a counselor and consultant. I work and specialize with trauma and abuse. So that's my area of expertise in terms of my own field. And when I was talking to Brenda, I was wondering, well, what could I share in this group? And I realized, well, I had a unique story. I had a first marriage where, it was not your typical abusive situation, but it was a situation that I came across a lot in my practice, where people were in relationships where they were being mentally and emotionally abused, but it wasn't all the time. And what it did was it just was very sort of minuscule, chipping away at your esteem and chipping away at at who you are as a person. And after a while you stop, listening to your intuition and things like that. And I thought, well, there's lots of people out there in those kind of abusive relationships that really needed to hear that. Now, I had healed my abuse a long time ago. I've been in a very happy marriage for the last 22 years, but it was a story that kept coming up in my practice. And I thought, well, I can share this from the perspective of, this is really something that people need to know. And Brenda and I actually did a series of broadcasts on her Facebook page that we're talking about the different types of emotional and mental abuse that go on. And in my opinion, when you're going through physical abuse, it's really obvious, and you've been abused. If you're going through sexual abuse, you've been abused. But oftentimes with emotional and mental abuse, you just don't know. And after a while, you just start to think you're crazy or that it's all your fault. And so I really thought that was a good thing to bring up in a book, to inspire people and to let them know, you're not crazy. Listen to your intuition. There is something going on. And you can get over this. You can heal it.
what would you say, Nadine, is that you are aware of, that you have learned about yourself from jumping into this project that you didn't know before?
Well, I think that there are many different ways of inspiring others to heal. And I think that what Brenda is doing with the books is a really wonderful way of having people relate their traumas, relate their abuse, so that other people can go, I experienced some of that, or I experienced something similar. And look at how that person has been inspired. Look at how that person has healed. Look at how that person has gone beyond it. And I think that really this is another way that people can get assistance, or at least even start to think about getting assistance, and start to heal. And I think that that's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Jodi, welcome to the studio. Thank you so much for showing up today and being part of this group. I'd like to invite you, Jodi, to perhaps share your why. What was your motive for jumping in on this major book project, and how has this experience changed your life?
Well, I actually had someone reach out to me and connected me with Brenda, saying, that you should share your story. And when she first sent it, I was like, really? I wasn't really sure. And I was like, funny thing about it though is they told me when we went through the process, and they're like, this is the time frame you have to do it, is I'd actually already written most of it, because in the back of my mind I had it wrote down in a book that I would one day write a book and share my story, but I never ever thought it would kind of circle around in the way that it did. So that was pretty unique and cool for me. But yeah, so it's been a really good experience. So when I wrote it, listening to the ladies, I haven't had a whole lot of connection with everybody through this process, because I've been off doing all my other little thing over here. But I think the most powerful thing is knowing that your story, even about if you think it's little or small, that there's always somebody out there that goes, oh, I can relate. I understand. You get it. With what I do with my work, I'll often get a message and somebody will say, I'll share something that I think it's not on the forefront of being the biggest thing I want to get across. And somebody will send me a message and they'll be like, oh, thanks for sharing that. Like, it just really hit home, and it was relatable. So I think what I've probably learned the most through going the processes and writing my story has been just that there is so many others that can relate, and you can bond from it, and you can also help people go through different things.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Something that's just come to my mind right now is early this morning, I picked up a news feed on a wire that I was not surprised to see, but the headline was that domestic abuse right now is going through the roof. And the article really touched on the fact that these are in homes where partners are home together 24/7. They're on shelter in place or quarantine. And so the abuse was there prior, but it's just amped up. It's heightened. So it was there before, but now there's more of it. And the local police and authorities are getting calls at a much higher rate. It's almost becoming an epidemic proportions in local communities. And I'd like to ask you, Brenda, from your perspective, what's your experience? What are your thoughts on that? And what if there was one man or woman that is listening right here, right now? What can you share with them that perhaps may help them navigate through this darkness, this moment of darkness in their life?
Right now, this is a very unique time in our lives. I mean, we've never been into a pandemic where we have been forced into isolation with your spouse and with your children, especially if your children are younger. So I've often said now that people are learning who they live with. You know, you send your kids to school and the teachers deal with your children and you get them home at night, and you don't really know who your children are after a while. This is forcing people to find out what their children are truly like. Do they like their children? Do they not like their children in their personalities? Because, you know, some of them are a little bit, I watched a video and one was smashing a TV with a broom. Well, okay, there's a problem. You know, you're forced to live now with your spouse in constantly with no time out, and you get to see where the cracks are in your relationship and where there's solidness in your relationship. Like Bud and I, we've been together, you know, locked in our house here for a couple months. It's a good thing I like the guy, you know, but that's just it. This is where you're finding out who this person is. And if you are in that situation, if you're finding out that the abuse, whether it's mental, physical, or violent, is becoming more and more, then you need to now step out and seek some help. And because this is now up in your face. And like Nadine said, you know, emotional and mental abuse, you know, you can't see that. And I lived my marriage in emotional and mental abuse. So I understand perfectly well that those subtle things that are said to you, those little digs that are said to you, drag you down. And if you're finding that you're in that relationship right now and your spouse, whether male or female, is doing that, then you need to start looking at getting some counseling, couples counseling, whatever you want to call it there, singles counseling if you need to. But if you're in a marriage, you need to actually have both of you together, because otherwise one can't do the counseling and the other one not, because it's just not going to work. And if it's not going to work, then you need to take steps to remove yourself from the situation when this pandemic is over, because it's not going to get any better when the pandemic is over. It's just still going to be there, and it's going to be prevalent. So, you know, it's a tough time for lots of people, and it's a beautiful time for lots of people. And I was watching Garth Brooks' show, and he said there's a blessing and the curse. The blessing is that you get to spend time with your family. The curse is you get to spend time with your family. You know, so you have to, you know, so I don't know. I just think that anybody that is now in this situation with their family and they're saying, this is not what I signed up for, I can't do this anymore, then you need to start taking steps now and be proactive in it and start planning what you're going to do and get things in order.
From your experience of having gone through it in your own life, as well as being such an integral part of Sacred Hearts Rising, if an individual is in fact in some type of heightened moment of abuse in their home right now, what would you suggest they do to help reduce instead of fuel the fire? What can they do?
Stop being reactive and be proactive. So if you're so I'll give you just an example. When I was in my marriage, it was 2 years before I left, and it had come out, and you know, all of the affairs and all of the women and all of the stuff that was going on, and I just basically said, in 2 years I'm gone. 2 years, we're done. And then I never said another word. I never interacted about it. I never talked about it. I just started making my plan, and I started getting interviews about a year prior to me leaving, of where I'm going to go, where I was going to send the horses, what I was going to do. My girls are going to be graduated from school already. So just plan. Don't just all of a sudden go, okay, I'm out of here, with no plan. You have to have a plan, and you don't have to discuss your plan with anybody, but you have to have a plan of getting away, you know, because you have to look after yourself. You know, if you think that you're going to get spousal support, you know, think again. That might not happen. So just stop being reactive, stop pushing the buttons that are happening, because I guarantee you are helping push buttons too. And if he comes home and he's crappy, or he's out chopping wood, or she's out chopping wood and they're crappy or whatnot, just kind of vacate out of the way and start thinking about looking after yourself and your safety while living with this person.
Thank you for sharing that, Brenda. With what time we have left, I'd like to ask for you, Brenda, and specifically, where do you see Sacred Hearts Rising going? Where are we going to rise to?
The sky is the limit. I have no idea. When I started Sacred Hearts, I had no idea that we would have 3 books. I had no idea that we would have a summit. So I honestly have no ceiling of where Sacred Hearts is going to go. It's just going to rise, and we're all going to just ride that wave together, because every author is in Sacred Hearts, is on the train of Sacred Hearts. Whether they stay on or they get off, it's irrelevant. They're still on the train. So all of us are Sacred Hearts. I'm not Sacred Hearts by myself. It takes all of us together to be Sacred Hearts and to make Sacred Hearts what it is. I'm just the guy with the rudder and navigating, you know.
I love that answer. You know, the beautiful thing is that we don't have to know. We just have to trust and show up, do our part, and then just have faith and trust that it's gonna work out just as it's supposed to, not necessarily as we want it to, but as perhaps the universe wants it to for us. One last question I have for perhaps Elizabeth, from your perspective. We've acknowledged that there is close to 60 co-authors over the anthology series of Sacred Hearts Rising. There are only, so far it appears, I believe I am the 4th male that has contributed as a co-author. Why do you think we have not had more men, and or what do we need to do as a society to invite more men to feel safe, to share their part of their life story that can be inspirational for other men, and perhaps women that read the story that end up with hope for their own partners, their own children, their own siblings, even, or friends?
Ooh, good question, Jay. For me, with the journey of Sacred Hearts, we opened that up for men. Like Brenda's got good things coming for men, and you know, men are able to share. I think it's because it's been told to them for generations after generations. Just man up, don't cry, get over it. You know, scrape your knee, get up, go again. We need to stop doing that with men, and with our spouses. Like, support them if they're having a hard day. Say, you know what? Okay, they're having a hard day. They have hard days too. Men have hard days. You know, it's not always us women, you know. And I think we're going to get more men with Sacred Hearts in the future. I see that coming. More men will open up. When they see that other men are opening up, they will open up. There'll be a ripple effect.
I love that, Elizabeth. Thanks for sharing your perspective. Brenda, do you have anything you'd like to add to that from what you have seen and witnessed, especially as 4 men now have, in fact, stepped forward between book 2 and book 3? There's 3 of us in book 3, and there was 1 in book 2. What's your take on it? What can we do?
Yeah, men have to become brave. I mean, women have been brave for a long, long time, and we've had to be brave in the face of adversity. And so we're kind of used to that. And men aren't so used to being brave. They're used to being macho. And you have to be brave. You have to truly be a brave person to share your story. And like I say, women, we know what that means, but a lot of men have no idea what being brave is about, you know, and showing their emotions and being vulnerable. And I think a lot of men feel that if they are vulnerable, then that's a sign of weakness, and it's not. It's a sign of strength. You know, I mean, if you want to get a babe, be brave.
Well, that's an interesting comment right there, Brenda.
It's kind of true. It's kind of true. Women dig guys that are vulnerable. I mean, they like some women like the tough guy, but you still want that vulnerable.
Well, here's the thing that you just said, Brenda. I'm going to speak from my own experience of being a man living in a modern society. Yeah. Is that I had this perspective that I lived in a very black and white world. Mm-hmm. I used to live in that world. And what I've learned today, my own healing journey of coming home to myself, is that there's such a thing called both. There's a time for me to show my masculine side and be strong and be tough and be on it. But there's also the appropriate time for me to show my vulnerability, to feel safe enough in my own home, to show my vulnerability and be okay with it, be at peace with it. And it wasn't like it just happened overnight. It was a process. It took time for me to learn how to trust myself first and foremost. I know that no matter what, as long as I was speaking my truth, that it was going to be okay. And you didn't necessarily have to agree with me. You didn't even have to accept me. I just had to be willing to learn how to accept myself and come in that moment and share my experience. And, through that process of finding how to live in society with the balance of both, balancing the masculine and the feminine, the divine, my life today is very different. And I like how it feels to show up this way. It's a whole lot less pressure and it's a whole lot more freeing. The end result is living in a space of freedom. And that's what it's about.
Yeah, that's exactly true, because what you just described is no different for women. It is exactly the same for women. We need to show our feminine. We need to show our masculine. So to me, there is fundamentally no difference between a man sharing their story and a woman sharing their story, because we're all in exactly the same space. It's just that men are now just finally starting to open up about it. And but it's iconic that it's exactly parallel and exactly the same thing.
You know what I find encouraging, and Brenda, I echo that. I agree. We all have the same hormones, just different levels of it. It's really just getting in touch and learning how to feel safe, expressing both the feminine and masculine. The first show that I wanted to launch 2 years ago was an idea that came to my mind. And actually, it came to my mind through my heart space. And that show was launched in July of 2018, almost 2 years ago. And that show is called Real Men, Real Talk, Raw. And my biggest fear in launching that show was how was I going to find men that would be willing to show up and do an interview, share their story, not in a book form, but in a live streaming on YouTube and Facebook. And that's what prevented me from initially launching the show. Eventually, I had the courage. And, it's coming up on 2 years. And I love that show because it's a great platform, pretty much doing what you're encouraging men and women to do in Sacred Hearts Rising. As a matter of fact, this Thursday, I've got 4 men joining me from all over the world that are real men, real talk, and they are going to be raw. One gentleman is coming in from Australia. He's a fitness model, retired fitness model today, a health and wellness coach. I got another guy coming in from Florida. He is, I'd say he's an actor, celebrity chef, and a filmmaker today, Charles Maddox. And then I've got 2 other gentlemen. One other guy coming, his name is Josh Richard. He is executive art producer of Shark Tank and other Disney network TV shows. And he's a coach, and he's going to come in, and he's been in before, Josh Richard. And then the last gentleman is Jeff Fasano, who's a world acclaimed photographer. These 4 men are real men, and they talk real, and they've got their full story and they share it, and it's just a beautiful experience for me as a host to create that safe space for men to come in and share their story, just as you have done with Sacred Hearts Rising. It's empowering, and the work that you're doing and all of you ladies are doing is giving both men and women inspiration and courage to show up and share their story of coming from perhaps surviving to thriving in their own life today. And each time another person, another co-author steps forward and steps in to share their story, what we are bringing is sparks of light to other people, knowing that it's possible, that in fact they can feel better about themselves and begin to experience to an extent what each one of us have, which is inner freedom and inner peace and forgiveness to ourselves for whatever our plight may have been.
It's true.
And so we are at the hour. I'd like to just take a moment here to thank each one of you amazing authors today. Sacred Hearts Rising, Sparks of Light will be on a book stands tomorrow on Amazon booksellers. And you can, in fact, purchase the book today as a pre-order. I've been streaming across the bottom the actual location on Amazon where you can pre-order the book. Otherwise, it's going to be available tomorrow. If you just do a Amazon search for Sacred Hearts Rising Sparks of Light, you will, in fact, be able to find the book for sale. And with that, Brenda, I'd like to invite you just to share some closing comments on this experience for yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Well, I'd like to thank all of the authors who have decided to trust me in their journey in this book. It's a very humbling experience to know that you have chosen me to share your story. So thank you all very much. And without you, and that's everybody, all of the Sacred Hearts people who have shared their story, Sacred Hearts wouldn't be here. So thank you for everybody for believing in what Sacred Hearts is all about, and for believing in yourselves first and foremost, and knowing that you can have a better life after you've shared your story and you've decided that you don't need that servicing you anymore. So I want to give my heartfelt thanks in that aspect. And Jay, thank you for putting on the show today. It has been a great pleasure to be here. And ladies, I love you all very much. And we are going to be talking soon. Tomorrow, yay!
All right. So this, just to reiterate, tomorrow is launch day. Tomorrow is book number 3 in anthology, Sacred Hearts Rising, Sparks of Light. Thank you all for joining me today, this April 13th, 2020. May you all stay healthy, stay wealthy, and just to live a life of peace and freedom. And with that, thank you all for joining us on Real People, Real Stories Raw. I'll be back this afternoon at 5 o'clock on the West Coast on Real People, Real Health. I've got the cast of a docuseries that right now is premiering on WGN Network. Got the cast and the filmmaker coming in from the show called 8 Days. That's at 5 p.m. on the West Coast. Thank you all for joining us on Real People, Real Stories Raw. We'll catch you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.